because neoprene is used in a lot of very, very important products, such as latex during the pandemic, IV bags. The Department of Defense uses neoprene. It's used neoprene, so it's important to me because I'm a hunter. And also in the construction business, all the sealants that you're caulking materials. The United States that produces neoprene. They closed this facility, shut these great people their jobs, and exporting those jobs to upon China, those types, that raw material to make the very products that we talked about. And so I think that this is a classic example of understanding the difference between the things that the Biden administration has done to basically harm America's economy, its manufacturing capacity, and its security. And so I just want you to know that we made a promise to the people in Louisiana that we were going to work on public safety and crime, and we did. And we promised that we were going to work on education, and we made a big announcement the other day. We promised that we were going to work on the economy, and that we were going to do it in a way where we promised to focus on the jobs and the industries that made Louisiana. And so today we're fulfilling that promise by working to protect the jobs and this facility here. And so now I'd like to turn it over to my DEQ secretary.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Aurelia Skipwith Giacometto, Louisiana's Department of Environmental Quality Secretary. And so I want to say thank you all for coming today for this very important announcement. And so when I came to Louisiana to serve here at DEQ, Governor Landry made it very clear that his goal is to elevate the status of Louisiana to such a level that is great as its residents, that is as vast as the natural resources that you find here, and that it is second to none other for sportswomen and men for their paradise. And under Governor Landry's leadership, Louisiana is open for business. And so DEQ sits squarely in the middle between environment and business. And that is why we're here today. And so it's my pleasure to be back here. I was here about 4 months ago, here at the Denka plant. And so last week, DEQ, we issued a 2-year extension for Denka to be able to implement its emission reductions. And so EPA published a rule that gave facilities 2 years to implement, but only 90 days was given to Denka. And why is that? It was only 90 days for neoprene facilities, and as the governor has so aptly stated, there is only one neoprene facility in the U.S. That's right here in Louisiana, and that's right here at Denka. And so Denka is producing those essential precursors for products, such as wetsuits, to golf clubs, to life jackets. And so it is impossible to retrofit Denka and implement those reduction emissions in 90 days. So effectively, EPA's rule is a stop order for this company. And if that happens, again, that means the business and our products go to China. And Louisiana will not stand by and let that happen. And so under the authority that is delegated to DEQ, that 2-year extension was granted, and that will give Denka and its employees the time for the courts to make that decision while Denka continues to operate, reducing its emissions and monitoring. And so I am proud to serve, and through the support of the governor, being able to make that decision. And so with that, it's my pleasure to now turn it over to General Liz Murrell, who has been standing up in courts for DEQ, for Denka, and for Louisiana.
Thank you, great to be here and to be with you. I want to thank everybody who works in this facility and apologize to you on behalf of the EPA for all the attacks on you and your company. I'm here to tell the press and just to announce that today we are filing a petition for review of the rule that forces Denka into this impossible box. And it affects, obviously, it affects the state and it affects the country. It affects our national security. It affects a lot of supply chains. And so, there's a lot of reasons why we should all be invested in this challenge. My office has challenged EPA on a number of fronts. We will continue to do that. As recently as 2 weeks ago, we were successful in getting the United States Supreme Court to affirm our challenge to additional efforts by EPA to take down operations involving a wide swath of industries in the petrochemical industry. So they were attacking our ability to regulate under the Clean Air Act. They were increasing the regulations that are imposed upon us and the levels of compliance to impossible levels. And then in this rule, they are attempting to take away our authority by footnote, frankly, to grant an extension of this nature. And so we've been able to act. I'm glad that DEQ is able to act before this rule becomes effective, and we are challenging the rule and will continue to challenge that rule all the way through the legal process.
Thank you, Attorney General. And now to turn it over to Senator Greg Miller.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It is great to be with the hard-working men and women of Louisiana, of the river parishes. And this is why we're here today. It's not just about a company, it's about you. It's about you who live here, you have families here, you own homes here, you pay taxes here. And we all know what the product y'all make here is important for our lives. Orthopedic braces and automobile parts. And the EPA's decision, left unchecked, would, we all know, would shut down this, the only producer in the United States. Not only would it shut this down, it likely cause DuPont to shut down because they're important partners, leading to more job losses. Other manufacturers were given 2 years to comply, while it singled out Denka, giving them only 90 days. The EPA likely knew what it was doing, and when they issued these regulations, and knew that there was no way Denka could have ever complied with this. So that does not seem to be accidental. I cannot overstate how important it is to keep Denka from shutting down its operations and shifting its production to other countries. Denka is a major employer in this parish, in this region, with high-paying jobs, substantial benefits, and it's a major taxpayer. Property taxes, sales taxes, and also it pays great wages, and y'all pay taxes. Y'all pay sales taxes and property taxes. So that's important for our funding our public schools, for our law enforcement, for our infrastructure, especially in St. John Parish, which has already suffered twice in the last 12 years from hurricane flooding. So families in this area, and I'm thinking about y'all and your families. Y'all depend on the jobs provided by this company. And I can't imagine what y'all have been going through, wondering if come October 15th, y'all gonna have a job. I know some of you probably close to retirement and looking forward to it, but you don't want to retire forcibly and have to be thrown out looking for a job when you're in your 50s and 60s. Denka has continued to work towards the reduction of emissions, and I know they realize that they have more work to do. I applaud Governor Landry being here, and Secretary Giacomelli, AG McMurray, and all of the work that y'all have done to try to get us some relief here and buy us some more time. Y'all realize how great the economic impact of this company is and how big the personal impact it is to all of you. I appreciate all of their efforts and working towards the solutions which will make our community safer while preserving valuable jobs and economic contributions to our parish and our state. They are saving jobs, and that's what he got elected to do. That's what I got elected to do. We want to build this state. We want to create new jobs, but we can't start taking away jobs. Again, thank you all for your actions. Thank all of you for standing strong and being a great part of our community and working hard and building the American dream and being a vital part of our economy.
Thank you very much, Senator Miller. And I would like to now turn it over to Denka Plant Manager Michelle Heffrick, who has been at the helm leading Denka through this, as well as the executive leadership. So Michelle.
Hello, my name is Michelle Helfrich, and I'm an executive officer and a plant manager here at Denka Performance Elastomer, or DPE. I want to extend a heartfelt welcome to Governor Landry, Attorney General Murrell, LDQ Secretary Giacometto, and Senator Greg Miller. I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to publicly thank Secretary Giacometto for her department's decision to grant DPE a 2-year extension to comply with the EPA's final rule. Since the day that she took office, Secretary Giacometto has expressed steadfast support for our facility and a strong belief in the importance of the work that we do. In fact, one of our first official acts was to take an in-depth tour of our facility in April. I also want to thank Governor Landry for consistently standing with DPE, not just as governor, but also during his time as Attorney General. We would not be where we are today without his leadership and commitment to our company and to our employees. Attorney General Murrell, Senator Greg Miller, our local representatives at the state level, and members of the state's congressional delegation have also been strongly in our corner. We are very grateful about what we're so proud to do here at the site. This facility is the sole producer for neoprene in the entire United States. We have been owned and operated by DPE since 2015. Neoprene is used in important U.S. military equipment. The neoprene that's produced here at the site is also a component for critical products in the automotive, healthcare, and the construction sectors. LDQ's decision to grant us the extension of the compliance deadline comes after nearly a decade of investment that has reduced this plant's emissions to historically low levels. Since DPE purchased the facility in 2015, we have invested $35 million in voluntary emission controls, reducing our emissions by 90% from the 2015 level. I hope you will take a few minutes to study the graphs that we've provided. The data depicted was submitted in support of our extension request. In the past 2 years, we have achieved additional and significant reductions through further investments, innovation, and hard work. DPE installed a continuous fence line monitoring system with oversight from the EPA. Data from that system has confirmed that plant emissions are historically at low levels. LDQ's extension will enable us to continue this crucial and significant work, and we are so grateful to have this additional time while ensuring that our emissions do not pose a public health risk. I, of course, want to take this opportunity to thank all of our 250 dedicated employees. Without their strong work ethic, professionalism, and commitment to DPE, none of these record emission reductions would have been possible. Safety remains our top priority. We emphasize this both in our day-to-day work and also how we manage changes within the plant. Our employees are the reason DPE continues to thrive as the country's only producer of neoprene. And now it's my pleasure to turn it back over to Secretary Giacometto. Thank you.
So I think that covers it, but there's one thing that I think is important for the people of Louisiana to know. EPA's basis for the 90-day for implementation was imminent endangerment. There's simply no credible science to substantiate that claim. No such emergency existed when my predecessor, Dr. Chuck Brown, with input and support from the EPA, worked with Denka to first reduce the emissions by 85%. That took emissions from 118 tons per year to 18 tons per year. At that time, far from claiming that there was an emergency, EPA celebrated those emission reductions made by Denka. Now, where we stand several years later, it is crystal clear that no such emergency exists when Denka has taken even further emissions reductions to now where it's below 13 tons per year. Denka's emissions have decreased dramatically, but unfortunately, EPA's motivations have increased. So I'm sure that the press has some questions, and we will make ourselves available to the reporters, and thank you all for coming. And I just want to say thank you very much to the employees that are in this room for the great work that you do here at Denka. And it's important for Louisiana, and it's also important for this nation, so keep up the great work.
Any questions?
Governor, can you talk, and this question is really for anyone up there, can you talk about what specifically would have to be done in those 90 days? Is that 90 days to implement physical changes here at the plant? Is it 90 days where the EPA grants an extension if the plan was presented?
Well, first, I can bring Michelle up, but I think it's important to recognize that Denka has communicated to us that it would be impossible for them to meet the 90-day deadline. So they can't. I mean, it wouldn't matter what. They just could not. But I think it's also important not to lose sight of what the Secretary said, and I think General Muro said as well, is that no other facilities in the United States were granted such a short window. All the other ones were granted a 2-year extension, and yet this facility was singled out for a 90-day extension, or given only a 90-day extension. So, that's what I would say.
Michelle, do you want to add anything about whether physical changes would actually have to happen in those 90 days?
So there would be physical changes that would be required, and for any plant to be able to implement within the 90 days is completely unrealistic and unreasonable.
And do you think EPA would consider extending that as 90 days if a plan was presented?
I don't think so.
And I mean, I would point out, EPA published the rule that is attempting to withdraw the authority from the state under the Clean Air Act to grant extensions. So we still have that authority now. DEQ has exercised that authority now. But when this rule becomes effective, they would be taking it back specifically just for this plant. So it's a very targeted action against Denka. They have no intention of extending it because this was a very targeted.
Targeted because this is a neoprene facility?
I mean,
It's a great question.
We don't know. I mean, they've been working with EPA for several years, as the Secretary pointed out and as Michelle pointed out.
Do you think Joe Biden had a direct involvement or even knows what's going on with this EPA rule?
That's a great question. I don't know, I mean, you make an answer that question based upon the results of the debate, but look, again, irrespective of whether the president knows what neoprene is or not, okay, the fact of the matter is that his administration, the people that work for him, the people that support him in Congress, allowed the EPA to come and targeted these great people, okay, to produce a product that we need to make vital products. I mean, think about, Secretary Giacomo pointed out before we got in, the 4th of July is coming up. I mean, think about the irony of that. Think about what this country, what happened during the 4th of July, why we celebrate its independence, its freedom, its responsibility, its capitalism. It allows, we know that we build this country when we allow great companies like Denka to go out and to create products. But we also know what happens when we depend on other countries for those products as well.
My question is, so the announcement today is that you are granting a 2-year
Extension.
extension, but the EPA's rule will come in and cancel that, what you're
No,
granting?
No, so
Yeah.
what's happening is that the Department of Environmental Quality always had the authority to grant extensions. Extensions, that's right. And what's interesting is that they then came in and said, we no longer are going to allow the departments to grant extensions. So before that rule came into play, the secretary decided, based upon what she saw here, to grant the 2-year exemption. But in a few days, we would not have the ability to do that.
So all it does is give Denka more time to comply with the rule unless we are successful or Denka is successful in our challenge to the rule. It's a complicated rule. It has a lot of technical aspects to it that affect the way the plant is constructed. So the government and the courts and we are gonna have to work through the legal challenge to the specific aspects of the rule. If we're successful, the rule will never be implemented.
And look, I think about this,
We're
and
not
I'll
there
take
to-
that question, but let's just think about this. If EPA and the president were interested in making sure that we had a neoprene manufacturer in the United States, we should only have one of them, these great people do. And they said, look, y'all got some problems, or we think you got some leadership problems. You would come and you'd sit down and say, okay, let's walk through some metrics, and then you could see. Now this was done before they did that, right? And you can say, oh, you're making these great strides. We certainly don't want you to close down. If you really wanted them to stay open, if you really wanted Americans to stay employed, that's what you would do. But we're here today because that's absolutely not what they did.
So you're saying they're not working with the company?
Well, how can they work with them when they know? If EPA says, oh, listen, we're going to give you 90 days. And they can say, well, we can't do it in 90 days. Look how long it took us to, we went out there and we reduced our emissions by 85% at that point, and another 5% afterwards. You would think they'd say, oh, if you can't do it in 90 days, we'll just treat you like everyone else and give you the 2 years. That's not what they did. It's very important for everyone to understand.
This is the last question.
Okay, well, we'll give it to you. We'll give it to you, don't worry, I got it. Go ahead.
Okay,
Go you and then we'll.
okay. Where is this petition gonna be a whole new suit, a whole new thing, or is it, there's like 3 or 4 different things running right now? Number 2, we'll just stick with that. Where will you file this, and will it be part of the appellate decision?
It's
Part of the
filed in
running
the
federal
District of
case?
Columbia Circuit. It's a petition for review of a rule, so it has to be filed in the District of Columbia appellate
It's a
court.
whole new
Yeah,
pleading,
Denka's already filed one. We've come in and filed one
and
as
you're
well.
doing your own.
Right.
When will you
They're all
lose,
consolidated
when will you
into one
lose
act.
the authority to extend if you don't prevail? Extend the
When the
time
rule
period?
becomes effective, which I think is in about 2 weeks.
It's not the 15th, October
Yeah.
15th?
Yeah, well,
Okay.
today, no, I think it's July.
July
Yeah.
15th.
July 15th.
July 15th.
So July 15th is when, all right, one last question. You guys have
That was
been,
a 3 point.
well, you guys have been in negotiations with EPA for years. There was a consent settlement recently about some of your operations, and if you look in EPA's rule there saying some of the things you could do are maintenance and sort of basic industry hygiene things that would cut emissions, like the brine pit and the open carts that carry some of this chlorine laden material around. Have you addressed that? Or you don't think you could do that in 90 days, or can you give us a little sense of what they're asking you to do? Because it looks like some of those things they felt like you could do in 90 days.
Wait, hold on. Let's go back and focus on this. It's the only neoprene plant in America. Ask those questions to how they produce neoprene in China. That's the problem that I got with the media. Because we hold these companies to such a high standard. I can guarantee you I guarantee you that the neoprene facility in China doesn't have the emission quality that we have here in the United States. Okay? So again, we start getting ourselves into the weeds. These great people work hard every day. They live around here. Okay? What we do is we go out and we cherry pick ways under which we can kill American workers, under which way, meaning their jobs, under which way we can export the great products that we need so that we then have to import them back and then rely on those countries. And then we never hold those countries accountable for the emissions that they spew. And so that's yeah, what's your question?
Okay, last question.
Last question.
Is there a chance the plant could still shut down in 90 days if this isn't resolved?
Well, that's why we're here. We're here to make sure that the plant continues to operate. We feel that we're on solid legal grounds. I have the utmost confidence in the Attorney General. And I have confidence in our courts. I think that the court decision that the Supreme Court handed down just last week, I think is gonna play on a lot of the things that we've seen in the way that the administrative state has targeted companies just like Denka. And so I feel very confident that we're gonna continue to operate here. I feel very confident we're gonna continue to produce neoprene. And it's my hope that at the end, Denka comes and tells us how they're gonna expand their facility, how they're gonna create more jobs, how they're gonna build a bigger, better middle class here in St. John Parish. And so that's what we're here. If something to that effect changes, we'll be right back at this podium.
Are you talking about Chevron, the Chevron decision that you feel like
Yeah, the
that's gonna
Chevron,
benefit?
yeah, I think it's gonna have a tremendous impact on the ability of agencies to target American workers in the way that it's done over the last 30 years. So again, I want to thank everybody. I really want to thank again the employees of Denka, the people of St. John Parish, who